I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. When the security guard blocked my path and said, "Service entrance is on the side," I simply smiled and nodded. What he didn't know was that this single moment would quietly expose everyone in that room. Before I go on, tell me in the comments where you're listening from right now. I want to know who's here with me for this story. Now let me take you back to how the night really began. The Aurora Crown Hotel in New York was glowing that evening, the kind of glow reserved for money, power, and people who are used to being admired. Crystal lights spilled onto the sidewalk. Valets moved with rehearsed precision. Inside, my younger sister Emily's engagement party was already being called the event of the season. I arrived alone. No designer dress, no heels, just my old gray sweatshirt from college, faded jeans, and sneakers that had seen better years. I'd come straight from a long flight and didn't bother changing. I didn't think it would matter. After all, I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there for my sister. The security guard's eyes traveled slowly from my shoes to my face. Not curiosity, calculation. He stepped in front of me like I was an inconvenience. "Deliveries go around back," he said, pointing toward a narrow side corridor. "I'm here for the Carter Harrington engagement party," I replied calmly. "My sister is the bride." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. More like disbelief mixed with amusement. "Right," he said. "Service entrance." I could have corrected him. I could have pulled out my phone, made one call, ended the misunderstanding in seconds. Instead, I felt something else rise inside me. A strange, quiet curiosity. So I nodded again and turned toward the side of the building. Sometimes silence tells you more than confrontation ever could. Before I reached the door, I heard heels clicking fast across the pavement. Emily's heels. She looked radiant, wrapped in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly expenses. For a second, her face lit up when she saw me. Then her eyes dropped to my clothes. The light faded. "Oh," she said softly, glancing between me and the guard. "He's right. That's the correct entrance." The words landed harder than the guard's dismissal. She laughed nervously, the kind of laugh people use when they want to distance themselves from embarrassment. "These things get confusing," she added, waving a manicured hand as if I were part of the hotel staff cluttering the scene. I searched her face for hesitation, for guilt, for recognition. There was none. I swallowed and walked through the service door without looking back. My sneakers echoed against the concrete floor, as if the building itself was taking note. Inside, the kitchen was chaos. Steam, clanging metal, orders being shouted over one another. Someone shoved an apron into my hands before I could explain. "You're late!" a voice snapped. "Start with the prep station." And just like that, I became invisible. As I worked, I listened. Staff whispered about Emily's demands, how she'd changed the menu again, how she'd sent champagne back because it wasn't cold enough to impress the Harringtons, how her future mother-in-law, Margaret Harrington, had spent the afternoon reminding everyone that her family had hosted events like this for generations. "She acts like she owns the place," one server muttered. I almost smiled. From the kitchen doorway, I caught glimpses of the ballroom. Emily adjusting her posture every time Margaret glanced her way, laughing too loudly, apologizing too quickly, trying so hard to belong that she didn't notice she was being measured, evaluated, and quietly dismissed. No one knew who I was. Not the guard, not the staff, not even my own sister. And standing there, hands smelling of garlic and shrimp, I realized this night wasn't about a party at all. It was about worth. About how quickly people decide who matters based on what they see. I tied the apron tighter and kept working. Because the truth was, I wanted to see how far they would go. The kitchen swallowed me whole. Heat pressed against my skin, thick with the smell of butter, garlic, and something sweet burning just slightly at the edges. Orders flew across the room in sharp bursts of sound. Metal trays clanged. Someone cursed in French. No one looked at my face. They only saw the apron. I was handed a knife and a crate of shrimp before I could explain anything. "Peel and clean, fast," a sous chef said, already turning away. So I did. As my hands moved on autopilot, I started listening. Kitchens are honest places. People don't perform there. They survive. And what I heard stripped the glamour off the ballroom upstairs piece by piece. "She changed the menu again," one server muttered as she rushed past. "That's the 4th time today," another answered. And now she wants the seafood course earlier, again. A line cook let out a hollow laugh. She wants everything earlier and better, especially when her future mother-in-law is watching. Emily's name floated through the room like a warning label. Not affection, not pride, tension. From the open doorway, I caught glimpses of her sweeping through the hall outside the kitchen. Perfect posture, tight smile, the kind of smile that hurts your jaw if you hold it too long. She was beautiful, yes, but beauty under pressure always looks brittle. She stopped near the prep counter, heels clicking sharply against tile. "The champagne is wrong," she said without greeting anyone. "I told you it needs to be exactly chilled, not cold, chilled." The head chef tried to explain. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if choosing the wrong word might detonate something. Emily cut him off. Margaret noticed. She always notices. That name changed the air instantly. Margaret Harrington. Even the dishwasher straightened when he heard it. I didn't need to ask who she was. Her presence announced itself. When she entered the space near the kitchen doors, conversations dipped, shoulders tightened. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She wore elegance like armor. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect distance from everyone else. Her eyes moved across the room the way people inspect antiques, deciding what was worth keeping and what wasn't. "She's old money," a server whispered near me. "Like real old money. Generations." Another voice followed, bitter and tired. "And she reminds us every chance she gets." Margaret leaned toward Emily, her voice soft enough to sound kind, sharp enough to cut. "It's lovely, dear," she said, scanning the decorations, though perhaps a bit ambitious. Emily nodded immediately. "Of course, I just wanted it to feel worthy." Worthy, that word echoed in my head. Margaret smiled, the kind that never quite reaches the eyes. "Well, these things take time. Some families grow into them, others try too hard." Emily laughed again. "Too quickly, too eagerly." "I completely understand." I looked down at my hands. They were steady, even as something inside me shifted. This wasn't celebration. This was audition. Behind me, the staff's frustration simmered closer to the surface. Someone mentioned how Emily had sent back an entire dessert tasting earlier because the presentation felt cheap. Someone else admitted the pastry chef had gone to the restroom afterward and cried. "She's not cruel," a server said quietly, almost defensively. "She's just terrified. Terrified of disappointing them. Terrified of being seen as not enough. That fear was costing everyone around her." I kept working, letting myself disappear into the rhythm of the kitchen, because invisibility is powerful when people assume you don't matter. They talk freely. They reveal themselves. That was when I felt it settle fully into place, the truth I'd been carrying silently all evening. This hotel, these walls, the polished floors upstairs, and the scorched pans down here. They were mine. Aurora Crown wasn't just a venue to me. It was one piece of a larger vision, one of 15 hotels under the Aurora Group banner, spread across cities where money liked to announce itself loudly. I had built that empire quietly, deliberately, learning every corner of places like this by walking through them unseen. I had learned long ago that people show their real character when they think power is elsewhere. Emily didn't know. The Harringtons certainly didn't know. And watching them now, watching the way Margaret assessed my sister and the way Emily twisted herself smaller in response, I understood exactly why I had never corrected anyone at the door. Because if I had walked in as myself, none of this would have surfaced. A server brushed past me, whispering, "If she asks for another change, someone's going to walk out." I glanced back toward the ballroom entrance, where laughter spilled out, bright and artificial. Two worlds separated by a swinging door, and standing in between them, knife in hand, apron tied tight, I realized I wasn't just observing a family dynamic. I was witnessing a transaction unfolding, one built on appearances, pressure, and unspoken expectations. I kept my head down and kept working. For now, I needed air. I slipped away from the kitchen under the excuse of restocking supplies and took the service elevator up, past the noise and the lights, to the quiet level where everything slowed down. The doors opened into a space that felt like another world. No music, no laughter, just muted carpet, glass walls, and the low hum of systems running exactly as they were designed to. My private operations suite. I locked the door behind me and let my shoulders drop for the first time that night. The city stretched out beyond the windows, sharp and glittering, unaware of the small war unfolding several floors below. I didn't sit. I went straight to the security monitors lining the far wall. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for confirmation. The ballroom camera showed exactly what I expected. Emily hovered close to Margaret Harrington, mirroring her movements, adjusting her posture every time Margaret's gaze landed on her. It was painful to watch, like seeing someone try to fit into a mold that was never meant for them. Then I noticed something else. Margaret wasn't mingling. She was managing. Her attention kept drifting toward the edges of the room, towards staff members who didn't belong to the Harrington inner circle. I rewound the footage 10 minutes. There it was. Margaret stepped aside with a man I didn't recognize, someone in catering attire who definitely wasn't part of the core team. She pressed something into his hand. Cash, folded tight. Her body language shifted, sharp and directive, as she pointed subtly toward the sound system near the stage. The man nodded too quickly. My stomach tightened, not with surprise, but with clarity. I pulled up the audio feed. It was faint, distorted by background noise, but enough words slipped through to tell the story. Timing, Margaret said. When it plays, everything stops. Then, quieter, almost satisfied, she needs to understand consequences. I stared at the screen, my reflection faint in the glass. This wasn't about tradition or standards. This was sabotage. I picked up my phone and made a call. Run a full financial snapshot on the Harringtons, I said when my CFO answered. Everything. Properties, liens, outstanding debt. I want it fast. While I waited, I didn't look away from the monitors. Margaret returned to the crowd, her expression calm, composed, perfectly maternal. No one around her suspected a thing. When my phone buzzed, I stepped into the hallway to take the call. The silence on the other end lasted just long enough to tell me the answer before words arrived. It's not good, my CFO said carefully. Multiple mortgages on the Connecticut estate, lines of credit maxed, accounts drained. They've been liquidating assets quietly for months. I leaned against the wall, the cool surface grounding me. How long? I asked. Best estimate? They're weeks from serious collapse. The pieces clicked together with devastating precision. The pressure, the superiority, the way Margaret watched Emily like an investment under review. This engagement wasn't a celebration, it was a strategy. Emily wasn't joining a legacy, she was being positioned as a solution. I ended the call and stood there for a moment, longer than necessary, because knowing the truth didn't make it easier to carry. It made it heavier. My sister had been trying so hard to be enough for people who saw her as leverage. When I returned my attention to the monitors, the tension downstairs had thickened. Glasses clinked louder. Laughter sounded forced. And then I saw him, the general manager. He stood near the entrance to the ballroom, folder in hand, his expression tight in a way I recognized immediately. He wasn't there for pleasantries. He was there because something had gone wrong. He stopped a server and spoke quietly. The server's face drained of color. I didn't need to ask what the folder contained. I already knew. Payment authorization failure. The Harringtons hadn't just been scheming. They hadn't even paid for the night meant to secure their future. My phone vibrated again, this time with a message from the finance team. The transaction had been rejected. Insufficient funds. Downstairs, Emily took the microphone to thank the guests. Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to mask it with enthusiasm. She spoke about unity, about families coming together, about new beginnings. Margaret watched her with unreadable eyes, and I watched the clock. Because the longer this continued, the deeper Emily was sinking into something she didn't understand. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was sharper than anger. It was resolve. I sent one final message and turned off the monitors. Then I took a breath, smoothed my hair back into place, and headed toward the elevator. Whatever was about to happen next, I was done observing from the shadows. The music faltered first. It wasn't obvious to most people, just a half-second hesitation in the band's rhythm, but I noticed it immediately. That pause rippled through the room like a held breath. Conversations softened. Glasses stopped midair. Then I saw him. The general manager stepped into the ballroom with a slim folder tucked under his arm. His posture was professional, controlled, but his eyes were scanning the room with purpose. He wasn't looking for the bride. He wasn't looking for the Harringtons. He was looking for me. Emily saw him too. Her face brightened with relief, the way it does when someone expects reassurance. She smoothed her dress and leaned toward Margaret, whispering something I couldn't hear. Margaret nodded once, already preparing the expression she used when problems were handled quietly for her. The manager walked past them without slowing. He walked past the head table, past the glittering centerpieces, past the guests who turned to follow his movement with polite curiosity. And then he stopped in front of me. I was still wearing the apron. "Ms. Carter," he said clearly, his voice carrying farther than intended. "May I speak with you regarding the Harrington event payment?" The room went silent. Emily's smile froze, confusion flashing across her face as she looked from him to me, as if waiting for someone to laugh and explain the joke. Margaret's eyes sharpened, her head tilting slightly, reassessing. I untied the knot at my waist slowly, deliberately. The fabric slid into my hands, suddenly light. I handed the apron to the nearest server, who stared at me like she had forgotten how breathing worked. Then I looked up. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, not raising my voice, because I didn't need to. "I'm Laura Carter." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd, people turning to one another, searching for context. And I own the Aurora Crown Hotel," I continued, meeting Margaret's gaze without blinking. "Along with every property under the Aurora Group." The air shifted. Emily's mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes filled, not with tears yet, but with shock so deep it emptied her expression completely. Margaret stood abruptly. "This is highly inappropriate," she said, forcing a smile that didn't hold. "We're in the middle of a celebration you haven't paid for," I replied evenly. I took the folder from the manager and set it on the table beside me. "Your check was declined, insufficient funds." Gasps broke out around the room, sharp and unfiltered. Margaret laughed once, thin and brittle. "That's absurd. This is a private family matter." "It stopped being private when you tried to turn it into sabotage," I said. I lifted my phone and connected it to the room's system. The screens that had been displaying romantic photos flickered, then changed. Video filled the walls. Margaret, unmistakable, pressing cash into a staff member's hand. Margaret pointing toward the sound system. Margaret leaning in close, her expression cold and precise. A murmur spread through the guests, swelling into disbelief. "This," I said calmly, "is you attempting to disrupt the event in order to humiliate my sister." Margaret's face drained of color. "That footage is out of context." "Then let's add context," I replied. I tapped again. Documents appeared next. Property records, financial summaries, outstanding liens, red lines highlighting debt where Prestige used to live. The room seemed to tilt. "You're insolvent," I said, not to shame her, but to end the pretense. Multiple mortgages, drained accounts. This engagement wasn't about family, it was about survival. Emily made a sound then, a small broken noise that cut through everything else. She looked at Margaret, then at her fiancé, searching for denial, for reassurance, for anything that might soften the truth. Margaret reached for composure and failed. "You had no right." "I had every right," I interrupted, my voice steady because my hands were. "This is my property, and you attempted fraud within it." I turned slightly so everyone could hear me clearly. "You have two options. You can leave quietly now, and this ends here. Or I can involve law enforcement for theft of services and attempted manipulation." Silence followed, thick and absolute. Margaret's husband avoided everyone's eyes. The Harrington name, so carefully polished, cracked audibly in that moment. Guests shifted, some already pulling out their phones, others suddenly fascinated by their drinks. Margaret gathered her purse with trembling hands. "This isn't over," she hissed. "It is for tonight," I said. She didn't respond. She couldn't. The family moved toward the exit in disarray, dignity shedding with every step. No one stopped them. When the doors closed behind them, the room didn't erupt. It exhaled. Emily stood very still. I turned toward her then, not as an owner or an authority, but as a sister who had watched long enough. And for the first time that night, she looked at me as if she finally saw who I was. The room didn't explode into noise the way movies always show. It collapsed inward instead. Emily stood there as if the floor beneath her had shifted, her hands clenched at her sides, her breath shallow and uneven. She stared at the closed doors where the Harringtons had disappeared, then slowly turned back to me. Whatever she had been holding on to all evening finally gave way. Her shoulders started to shake. "I didn't know," she whispered at first, as if the words might break if she said them too loudly. Then her composure shattered completely. She covered her face, tears slipping through her fingers, her perfect makeup streaking in uneven lines. "I didn't know any of this. I was just trying to be enough." People nearby instinctively looked away, giving her space, pretending to focus on anything else. I stepped closer, not as the owner of the hotel, not as the woman who had just dismantled an entire family's image, but as her sister. "I treated you like you didn't belong," she said through sobs. "I let them look down on you. I didn't even try to see you." Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." I didn't rush to comfort her, not because I wanted her to hurt, but because this moment mattered. Pain can teach things comfort never will. "If you had asked," I said quietly, making sure my voice didn't carry beyond us, "I would have helped you without conditions, without questions. That's what family does." I paused, letting the words settle. "But family can't be built on humiliation, and it can't survive on pretending." She nodded, wiping her face with trembling hands, shame and relief tangled together. For the first time that night, she wasn't performing. She was just Emily. The guests began to leave shortly after. Conversations were hushed, uncertain, as if everyone had just witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. The band packed up. The lights softened. What was meant to be a spectacle ended in quiet truth. In the days that followed, Emily did something no one expected. She asked to start over, not with apologies alone, but with action. She asked for a job, not an office, not a title. She wanted to learn how the hotels actually worked. She showed up early, in uniform, hair pulled back, standing beside people she had once dismissed without a second thought. She worked housekeeping. She helped in the kitchen. She apologized to the staff she had pushed too far. Some accepted it easily, others didn't. She understood both. Humility, when it's real, doesn't demand forgiveness. The wedding still happened, but it looked nothing like the night that almost destroyed her. No chandeliers, no performance. Just a small ceremony, honest and unguarded, surrounded by people who actually knew them. When Emily walked in, she didn't come through the grand entrance. She chose the side door. Later, when it was just the two of us, she smiled through quiet tears and said, "That's where I finally learned who I was." As for me, I didn't gain anything tangible from that night. I didn't need to. What I kept was something more important than authority or wealth. I kept my boundaries, I kept my integrity, and I kept the ability to choose compassion without sacrificing self-respect. Because worth isn't proven when everyone knows who you are. It's revealed when no one does. And now I want to hear from you. If you listened to this story from beginning to end, tell me in the comments whether you liked it, what part stayed with you the most, and what kind of stories should I share next. If you enjoy hearing real stories from women who found their strength when they were underestimated, please like this video and subscribe. There are many more voices waiting to be heard, and many more truths worth telling.